Good morning, Rob. How are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. Fine, sir. Fine. It's wonderful to have you with us, Phil.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here.
Did you do anything for May the 4th Be With You Day yesterday, Phil?
No. I mean, I didn't. I did a lot of things, but I didn't do anything in particular for that. I didn't even know that was a thing. Can I admit something on air? I've never seen. It has something to do with Star Wars, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's all about Star
Wars. Any Star Wars, zero, not 1 minute of one Star Wars movie ever in my life. Can you believe that?
Wow, that's impressive.
Why, Phil? Why? Some things just kind of defy imagination.
I know. I'm telling you. I think I'm the only person. I've never been into science fiction movies. If it can't reasonably happen, I don't really want to watch it. So I get that most of the movies I watch, that's probably not going to happen, but it could reasonably happen. So then I'm interested. But if it's a science fiction movie and it can't happen, I don't want to watch it.
Your cell signal's wavering in and out there, by the way, Phil.
Yeah, and my apologies. I'm driving, so I'm going to pull over just here in a second so they get this next second.
That part was subtle. I mean, solid. You were fluttering otherwise.
Yes, and Dylan had told me when I called in I was having issues too. Daggone AT&T.
Oh, well, next time just say, all right, Dylan, hang on, I'll call back.
I could do that.
Thank you. Phil, let's look at the numbers here. Futures markets are lower this morning. The NASDAQ down nearly 1%. S&P 0.8. Dow futures are down about 2/3 of a percentage point. We closed the week strong last week, and I'm looking at Monday's performance. It was pretty good here. The NASDAQ gained about 1.5%. Everybody else was close to that. Why the momentum to close the month, and what's going on this morning?
Well, the momentum to close the month was actually kind of an unwinding of all the terror fear that we had from Liberation Day. If you look at the bottom or the trough after Liberation Day, our S&P is up about 17% from that time. So the issue comes in right now is, are we in a bear market recovery, or is this the beginning of another bull market? And they both look exactly the same. So there's, from a technical analysis, there's a few levels that a lot of people will be watching. On the bottom end, 5,400 for the S&P, and on the top end, of course, back to our all-time highs, which is around 6,150 or in that neighborhood. So those two levels we want to break through, so we could say, hey, this is a bear market recovery or the beginning of another bull market. Neither one do we know, but we have had quite a bit of recovery from that trough that we had from those terrible, if we remember those terrible 3 days in April right after Liberation Day. Some of the sensitivity to the tariffs has eased up a little bit. We had backed off on some of the tariffs, and, of course, the 90-day pause, which was a huge bump in our market. So a lot of recovery since then, and we're actually higher now, before the open anyway, we're higher now than what we were before the Liberation Day announcement. So we have recovered all of that pain through the tariff talks.
Maybe somebody's...
Hold on, let me turn your mic back up, Bill. Sorry.
I'm not sure all of us have recovered, Phil.
Well, it depends on what you're invested in. Yeah, there's a few companies that hadn't quite recovered. But even leading up to April the 2nd, it hadn't been the best of years. We hadn't started off stunningly to begin with. We had a decent January, reached our all-time highs in February, and we started immediately giving a lot of it back. So it's been a negative year. It's been an extremely volatile year as well, with great highs as far as that. Like if you think back to that Wednesday, one of the best days in history. But we've also had the same thing on the downside with the three of the worst days in history that just preceded that. So a lot of volatility, which brings about a lot of emotion as well. And we all remember, investor behavior, and we're taught this, is people tend to remember the bad days more so than the good days. And there's been a lot of bad days to remember so far in 2025.
Phil, by the way, you are getting universal derision on our comments section for not having seen a Star Wars movie. Not even a minute.
I don't. You have to. I'm sure it is. That's why I said, I need to confess this. I'll probably never watch it. I'm just not much into sci-fi, guys. My apologies.
Someone, Mike Kite said you've lost all credibility. Ken Matson said, get him off the air, Rob. Damon Wright said it makes sense from a numbers guy and a Pittsburgh fan thinking they will win a Super Bowl anytime soon. It's universal derision, Phil. Worse than anything I may have conjured by talking about your weeds.
You know what? I'm the great unifier. I read your comments, and some of those guys like to go at each other and argue quite a bit. If they can come together for their disdain for me for not watching Star Wars, then I'll accept that role. I'm the great unifier today.
Well, they have come together, Phil. So your mission accomplished.
I'm waiting for Eric O'Rourke to pop in too. I want them all to be on the same page, even if it is negatively directed toward me.
Well, what's happened, Phil, to my Walt Disney, my Netflix stocks? All because the president said he was going to put a tariff on making films outside of this country.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around that, and I should have looked. I haven't seen what pre-market Netflix and Disney and the entertainment giant stocks have done, and I really don't know how that would work. Would that work by way of a tariff on a movie ticket to watch these movies? Their copyrights, if they're going to be viewed by Netflix and the like. I don't know what that would do to them.
Netflix, Phil,
honestly.
Netflix is down $53 this morning, 4.6%.
Yeah, and
and
Disney's down 2.5%. So.
Yeah, and here goes more of the tariff talks. It's something we never really thought about. Movies made outside of the United States, how would you put a tariff on those? And I don't know schematically how that would even look and how that would work, but clearly it's having an impact, just like tariff talks. And that's one of the reasons for the volatility, where man-made words, have caused our markets to fall in some cases, and in some cases pulling back on some of those words have caused our markets to jump. But clearly, and Netflix has been one of the stars of 2025. If you look at Netflix, and I don't really know how Disney's done, I don't want to speak toward Disney, but if you look at Netflix for 2025, it is up drastically, especially in comparison with some of the other companies and some of the other sectors. Netflix has done extremely well, and maybe it's because of their ability to escape tariff talks. And, how exactly would that work? I don't know, but clearly investors don't like the verbiage.
Dylan?
Well, I was just back here thinking that Phil does a pretty good job with suspension of disbelief when it comes to the Steelers winning football games, but he can't do it with Star Wars?
Here we go. As long as you're unified with everyone else, Dylan, I'll take it. I'll carry that burden today. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, as I explained to my friend quite often, they went 10-7 last year. We're acting as if they're the Washington Redskins are going 4-13 every other year. Washington Commanders going 4-13 every year. They were 10-7 last year, so it's not as if everything is falling off the cliff. They're just not winning Super Bowls like we're all accustomed to.
Phil, let's go back.
Dylan didn't have a comeback for that, Phil.
Oh yeah, he just pop in there and come at me. I'm trying to make friends with the young guys. And he just keeps coming at me.
I was going to let things move back on topic.
All right, that's cool. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Phil. Ever since Independence Day, we've been seeing the market move according to anything's announced on tariffs. And that seems to be the major driver. There are other things as well that if you look at it, you can make the comparison to a fire hydrant. We're just getting so much coming out at one time. Immigration, justice issues, war on justice, war on universities, education, and the like. They seem to have no impact at all on the market. Everything has been driven by tariffs. Is that a fair assessment?
It is, because when you look at some of these other issues, and I don't want to dismiss those issues, but in regards to, if you really boil it down to what the stock market is, it's the company's ability to make money, and with a lot of those, when it comes to terms of education, which of course my wife is all over that, and she pays very much attention to that. But the education issues, and I would argue the immigration does have an impact. But, it's on the back burners as far as can companies make money with some of these policies, and as it bleeds into the stock market. Just to be honest with you, and it's just the brutal truth, when we're speaking, if you like the education policies or if you don't like the education policies, right now it's not bleeding into the market. So a lot of these policies that attract so much attention and cause so much emotion, DOGE, for example, and the cuts of government jobs, at the moment, it's not bleeding over into the markets because there's other things in front of it that says, hey, this has a bigger impact, tariffs, has a bigger impact on a company's ability to make money and a larger impact on the overall economy. One in particular is now this battle with the Federal Reserve, where there's been, there was once he called Jerome Powell a loser and said that he needs to cut rates. The problem is Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, they're kind of they're between a rock and a hard place where inflation still isn't where they expect it to be or where they want it to be, not expected, but where they want it to be at the 2%. With their dual mandate, inflation and job market or the overall economy, the job market in a vacuum still looks pretty steady. And inflation isn't to where it's expected to be, and the Federal Reserve expects that the tariffs will cause some inflation, especially if we don't know what those tariffs are. How can we gauge what inflation it will cause? So therefore, how can I react off of this? I'll have to move forward as if it's transitory or temporary, like they did back in 2022, and we know that didn't really work out all that well. So right now, there's a lot of pressure to cut rates, and you wonder, because they do meet this week, and I think that's probably the most important thing that's happening this week as far as their markets are concerned. That's known anyway. The most known thing that would happen this week is the Federal Reserve meeting, and what they'll do, no one knows, but there's a lot of pressure for them to cut rates. But based off what they've said in the past, those measures are what they're looking at in order to prompt them to announce a rate cut hasn't occurred yet.
Extension of this is recession, and we hear a lot about recession, either pro or it will happen or will not happen, and it's hard to separate political rhetoric, what is actually being done or mentioned for political purposes. What does the market say about the possibility of recession?
Right now, the markets are pricing in about a 20% chance of recession, depending on which education you listen to. But right now, the markets do not expect a recession in the near term. And you can look at those same things that the Federal Reserve is looking at. The Federal Reserve will pay attention to that, too, because in a vacuum, in a snapshot, at our economy, consumer spending, consumer confidence has been down, but consumer spending, the jobs market as a whole, we added more jobs last week than what was expected. So from those measures, the stock market does not expect a recession in the near term. Now, we're always thinking, it's going to come eventually. That's part of the natural economic cycle is a recession. But when that will be, they're looking at that way out, not in 2025.
Another issue that's getting a lot of press, has been since COVID, was supply chain. And again, supply chain is being used for political argument, one side or the other side, whichever one you choose to invoke it from. And a lot of the businesses have stocked up the next 2 or 3 months that would be immune from supply chain disruption. Market looks ahead. What does the market say, or how well equipped we are to handle any supply chain disruption?
It wouldn't necessarily be a disruption like we had with COVID, although akin to it, because the supply chains were shut down simply because you didn't have the people to work, or there wasn't the demand for those products. The fear right now with the supply chain is the pull forward. So there was a lot of pull forward. And the easiest example I can use is automobiles. I've had, a lot of people saying, hey, I was expecting to buy an automobile maybe next fall or in the summer. I went ahead and did it because I was fearful of the vehicles that would be coming in with tariff additions onto them. So now I can get it cheaper than what I could have then. So there was some pull forward in the auto markets, and some had even said they'd seen it with iPhones and the like, that there were pull forwards with that. So right now, the supply chain issue wouldn't be because they can't move product. It's because they don't need to move product, simply because the pull forward on demand. And that is a concern a lot of people talked about. Even Warren Buffett, who made a huge announcement over the weekend, had talked some about pull forward on demand and how drastic would that be in the summer and the fall months, that people had purchased things in April, maybe early May, that normally would have been purchased in the fall months. Having said that, because of that pull forward, the next time earnings season comes around, we need to see those companies boost their profits. for this quarter due to that pull forward in demand. If it's going to be lacking in the late summer, early fall months, simply put, hopefully the companies can share the profits from it.
You mentioned Warren Buffett made an announcement, Phil. He asked the Berkshire board to replace him as the CEO, signaling the end of a long-running successful era. His Berkshire Hathaway A stock is down 22,000 plus this morning at $787,000. He famously refuses to split the stock price of Berkshire Hathaway. That's why it's such an insanely enormous number. But talk to me about investing without Warren Buffett.
He's still going to be around, and with his age and just being honest, he's probably not as involved as he was 20 years ago anyway. It was highly expected that before long they were going to make this announcement. What was surprising is there was no lead up to it. Even those close to him wasn't aware that he was going to announce this at their conference or at their meeting. He just kind of did it at the end and asked for support, which everyone unanimously supports. But he will still be around as long as he's living. I mean, he's pushing 95 years old, so it's kind of natural that move would take place. But the stock did pull back some over the weekend, simply because he made that announcement. But he will still be around. He's going to be on the board of directors, but he's given up the CEO role of Berkshire Hathaway. And he's one of those voices. There's a handful of voices out there when they say something that they can move markets, what they think matters, even if it's contrary to what's actually going on, what they think matters, and people listen to him. And some of his statements, he's historical. In all the training and the education that we have, he's got quotes and things that he has said and done that, quite honestly, is just common sense. And he echoed one of those in regards to emotion. He said the stock market is a great place to be if you have the temperament for it. It's a terrible place to be if you're emotional and you don't have the temperament for it. And he's speaking largely to April. Those that got overly emotional and bailed out or even bought into it because of political reasons. It's probably not a great place for you. The issue lies in from where we are here on the street is that people do need the stock market to sustain their retirement savings and to live a long, happy life financially anyway, to live a long, happy life and outpace inflation, because it's been proven time and time again, as Warren Buffett would say, it's the only true way to outpace inflation, even if you have to go through the volatility of months like we have in April and even negative years like we've had so far in 2025.
Let's talk oil prices here, Phil. OPEC in May is dumping an extra 500,000 plus barrels a day into the market, and they announced, OPEC Plus did, that they will surge production by 411,000 barrels per day in June. Oil prices are down 2% this morning. They are at $57 a barrel here, and exact price is $57.09 at the moment. And in talking with people who, and including you, and also listening to these folks on TV who are oil experts, so to speak, they say you get around $55 a barrel, and that's the sweet spot for domestic manufacturers in terms of profitability. You go under that, and they shut down production domestically because they can't afford to bring the oil out of the ground and get it produced and sold at a profit at that point. And we're dangerously close to that. So when we reduce production capacity domestically, it then helps boost what's going on with the Saudis and puts us more reliant on their oil. And that's where we are right now. They're jamming the market with additional oil, and the prices are falling.
Yes, and, from the consumer part of it, so we like to see that the prices are falling as we go to the gas pump, even though
they're not, by the way.
Yes, I was going to say, even though it doesn't walk hand in hand with the price, they still have to sell what's in the ground first. But the fear comes in with the expectation that the economy is going to slow and demand won't be through the summer months what demand typically is through the summer months. And now that they're flooding the market with it, the prices could drop even more. From a consumer standpoint, you like to hear that, but from, like you said, domestic production, it put a few people out of business. A few years back, I think we talked about that a week or so ago, where it had put some domestic companies out of business because they couldn't pull it out of the ground, sell it for a profit, and then that had a chain reaction even on some regional banks that had loaned those companies money, that dealt with their payroll, had their cash holdings as well. It caused lots of problems, not only for those oil companies, but for the financial companies that supported them. It caused a lot of problems, and that's the fear right now. Is the demand won't be as prevalent as what it typically is, simply because of tariffs and the likes and people traveling and such.
They have not been lowering the price. I think about 3 weeks now we've been in the low 60s to mid 50s for a barrel of oil, and gasoline prices have been stubbornly around $3.29.9 on Edward Miller Boulevard. In Pennsylvania, $3.79.9. I mean, at some point, you got to lower the price when the barrel keeps falling as much as it has.
Yes, that's out of my purview, but you can go a little bit further south and get some cheaper gas. If you just like to come down here and check out Financial Fields area of the county, I think it is a little bit less expensive down here. Which I need to bring something up, Rob, not to change the subject in the last minute, but I was at a fundraiser, spaghetti dinner fundraiser, and I met a loyal listener who the first thing he thought of me when he heard Financial Phil, he met my wife, he met my better half, and said, "Do you happen to know Phil McCoy?" And she said, "Oh, yes, it's that man that took your money at the door when you came into the spaghetti dinner." And he goes, "Oh, I listen every day. I listen to you and Rob go back and forth every day. Have you taken care of your lawn yet?" And I said, "Man, what has Rob done to my perception around the area? People just think I live in a pigsty and around a lot of weeds." So I'd like to say publicly, thanks, Rob, for that.
Well, that was
for that perception people have of me.
Al wrote check, and Al is too. I saw he logged in this morning. I saw him there on the Facebook comment section. But I think it's
super nice man.
It's a pertinent question. It's a very pertinent question.
Well, and he heard the episode where I said, Mrs. McCoy told me that I was going to get that lawn treated this year, and so I did. So my grass looks a little bit better than it typically does. But have no fear listening area. Although I don't watch Star Trek, even if I don't fertilize my yard
Star Wars.
Year, I'm sorry, Star Wars. See what I mean? And I didn't watch Star Trek either. But I have always taken care of my lawn. And if you guys want to get together and pick on me today, let me be the unifier for Eric and Damon and Ken and all these guys. Pick on me for not watching Star Wars or Star Trek, because I've never been a fan of science fiction.
All right, Phil, I'll send you out with your music here, buddy.
I am familiar with what that is.
Have a good one, Phil.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a great week.
Don't go away yet. How do we reach you for more information today, Phil?
You can reach us at 304-263-4343 or stop by and see us with an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue right here in Martinsburg.
I am your father, Phil. Have a good day, sir.
I don't even know what that means. Thank you, guys.